Every person has a story, but not everyone has a place to tell it. I've interviewed amazing people all over the planet. I want you to meet them.
Hi, my name is Debbie Heiser, and I am the most interesting person you've never heard of because I help people break free and make a shit ton of money in the process.
Well, Debbie Heiser, welcome to the Most Interesting Person You've Never Heard of podcast.
Thank you.
Thank you for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
You're welcome. So, I've talked about this some on the podcast, but some of my friends say not enough, because I think of myself as pretty spiritual. I'm a Catholic kid all the way through, and that still is meaningful to me. But there's a lot of different ways that we get spiritual, right?
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
a lot of different ways that we create stuff. And I just have always felt like the words we say, the beliefs we have, the energy we live with creates our reality and who we are, particularly the words we speak and our self-talk, all of that. It's what Henry Ford, what did he say? If you think you can or you think you can't, you're right.
Yeah, absolutely.
We do it all the time. And I've seen it in my own life. I've sort of been aware of it. I've seen it, literally with clients that I've had, who sort of talk themselves out of things that start to take off and then they kill it, right? And I think you and I talked about The Big Leap, this book that I love. Gay Hendricks wrote all around self-sabotage, right? Which is another thing I think we could talk about here.
Absolutely,
but,
absolutely.
That idea that you'd create that. So when I heard, there's no accidental meetings, I think either. Like you're supposed to meet the people you're supposed to meet.
I would agree.
And that the journeys that I have all the time with this crazy job that I have take me lots of cool places in front of people. And and so Meredith Banka, who's a really good friend of both of ours, when Meredith calls, I just listen.
I have people like that too, and she is one of them.
She's one of those people, right? So
Yeah.
she said, you got to talk. You two got to connect, and you got to talk to Debbie. So that's really why we got together, right? And she's like, well, Debbie has a podcast too. I'm like, oh, that's cool. Because I'd be nice to talk podcast just because I don't know. It's all made up and everybody acts like they know what they're doing in this podcast world.
And we don't.
No,
we just
don't.
get on and talk.
We don't. And I'm just like, this is how I want to do it. So it'd be good. And I always joke with Zach and Nick, who said, you got to do this podcast, that they wanted to film it. And I was like, a podcast is filmed? What? And so people of a certain age don't maybe watch them. They listen to them.
Right.
And people of a certain age watch them.
But then
listen to them, don't watch them.
If you're my 12-year-old nephew, he has his own YouTube channel and has 635 followers already.
Exactly. So
that's
it's
the new wave.
It's a totally new world. So we're lucky. We won the Signal Award this year.
I know. That's pretty great. Congratulations.
Best interview talk show. I don't know. That's pretty amazing, which is nice to hear. A lot of it, I think, is because we film it and it looks cool.
Yeah.
But I own a video, digital agency. I'm not going to have it not look good.
Well, and you have a really good radio voice too.
Oh, do I?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Well, that's I've never heard that, but okay.
Yeah.
So anyway, all that is a setup to how we're connected and why do you think Meredith wanted us to connect and what it is that you do that our worlds kind of seem like they collide?
Yeah, for me, it's a couple of different things. Some of it, what you talked about, in the fact that I think both of us have a spiritual foundation. And I say spiritual, for me, it's God, but I don't want people to get caught up in semantics either. Yeah. So I just say pick whatever word works for you, right?
Universe.
Absolutely. And there's things about other religions that I'm like, ooh, that's kind of cool, right? And so I think there was that piece of it. I think too, both of us from our previous conversation have this desire to have impact in the world, and impact in the way that we want people to think, right? And talk about subjects, talk about different things. They may or may not agree with us, but to bring into conversation things that are out there that are important in the world, and I don't love the word self-sabotage, so I'll go there right now, but in the realms that I work a lot in neuroscience, and I find that we live in a real guilt and shame environment. And so self-sabotage, we're brilliant people. If we knew what was stopping us, we'd stop it. Now there's conscious, like when I'm laying in my bed.
That's what I mean by I think most of it is unconscious.
Totally.
Unconscious sort of sabotaging of our selves, and that's what I read in The Big Leap is the way he describes it is we get to a place where we're not used to the good times being great.
Yeah.
And we don't know how to extend them. We don't teach our kids how to extend good times in their life.
Right.
Like what?
Right.
You know, work hard. It needs to be difficult. Like all the things you think
those
about
messages.
Success, or these words that you think about, you know, it's hard, you know, grit. This needs to be easy. You should have, you know, and it's like, really? Does it have to be? What if we just said it was easy?
Right.
And maybe it would
and
be.
It is.
And it is,
Yeah.
you know, so that kind of, but where he was going was often there are times where things go really well and we subconsciously aren't used to being there. And so what's comfortable for us is back to where we knew, even if it's not serving us anywhere near as good as the good time we were just on.
Because we have a committee in our head. And so one of those people,
the voices in the head.
right. Yeah. And one of those voices is trying to keep us safe, which sometimes then holds us back, which then is quote unquote self-sabotage, and people know that word. But when I start working with clients, so many times they are in this like guilt and shame mode. And so I say, well, back up. Let's not put the self in there, because you're brilliant. And if you did know what was stopping you, you'd stop it. But there's these messages. So I think that's part of why Meredith wanted you and I to connect, because we have very similar thoughts.
Yeah, we do.
In the fact
and
that
language.
our thoughts create.
Right.
And that the linguistic environment is really important.
Yeah.
You know, I love when people say I have to, and I do it too, and I catch myself because no, I don't have to go to the grocery store. I'm choosing to because I want good food. And I get to, and that then isn't victim, right? When we say I have to and, you know, I need to or I should, that's saying I'm not the co-creator of my own life.
I use the other term that pops up a lot is, you know, if we get this project, you know, and I always say when. Yeah. And correct it, you know, all the time. And I think the believing of that is really important. I've also heard, you know, a lot of people have talked about this. Eckhart Tolle talks about this a lot. There's a lot of different, you know, sort of thinkers about how this works. There's a quantum physics piece to this, right? That's really scientific and is really proving this. But, you know, how you say that stuff, the word I heard is the universe doesn't understand. The universe doesn't understand if you're being facetious. You know, it doesn't understand sarcasm. Right. So if you're making a joke and saying, you know, I hope this, you know, horrible thing happens, but you're just kidding, it doesn't know. No. And it starts to give you the things that you're being sarcastic about. You know what I mean?
Absolutely. Yeah. Because I just was having a phone conversation with a friend of mine where I was like, oh my gosh, I've been wanting this, but then I'm pushing back because I'm losing control over this. And she's like, yeah, isn't it a funny thing how we're getting what we want, right? But then there's growth edges, payoff, right? And there's growth edges too that happen within your own ego. And how sometimes we have to let our ego. Growth
edges. Yeah. What do you mean by that? That's
cool. Whenever I feel resistance, whenever I feel I call it excitement, because excitement and fear feel the same way in your body. It's your brain that decides what that is.
The physical feeling is exciting.
Yeah. And it's also fear, right? Well, that feels the same thing. Well, yeah. So anytime I feel any of those types of things, I know that I'm heading to a growth edge. Or if my critical parent comes out, that voice in my head, and not my parent, but me parenting myself and saying, oh, you should do this. So I say to people, if you're shitting on yourself, that's a really good indication you're being critical. Right. Or if I find that I'm looking at all the negative things or saying things I don't want because I know better, you say what you want. And when I find myself doing those things, then I'm like, ooh, I'm at a growth edge. And then it's like, bring it on.
So Gay Hendricks would call that his upper limit.
Yes, absolutely.
When you hit this upper limit, and how do you keep going? How do you bust through that limit?
How do you leap out of the
And how do you know, first, how do you realize and be aware that I'm there?
Yeah.
So your growth edge, it takes practice, just like anything else. It's a muscle.
Absolutely it is.
Where you can begin to realize and learn, I'm at the growth edge. Oh, I must be here. And you're saying when that voice starts or you start feeling whatever the feeling is, it's a feeling.
Right. It is. And I'm a big firm believer too that it's mind, heart, body, spirit. So sometimes your body, you know, there's a good book out there called The Body Keeps the Score. And there are things that happen, aches and pains and things that happen in our bodies that are manifesting.
It's not just being 57.
No.
Right.
Well, there's there's a little of that, but you know that then
or drinking whiskey.
Us, well, there you go. I'm a little jealous.
I know you. Yeah. You can't have whiskey.
Yeah, not right now.
I'm drinking in front of you. But I
That's
did
okay.
offer.
I know you did offer, and that's perfect. And here's what's interesting. Like, you did a really good job because you're like, oh, do you want something to drink? And I said, no, I'm good. And I kind of explained why, and I didn't even really need to explain why, but and then you just kind of dropped it, which was perfect. But it's interesting to me how, and I'll be honest, I haven't stopped drinking because I want to stop drinking, but it just doesn't taste the same after being sick, right?
Yeah, right. You were sick.
And so it's interesting, though, how much people push alcohol.
Oh, yeah. Oh,
and that's why I automatically start to say,
we've had lots
here's
of guests
this.
on here, several where I wouldn't even offer.
Yeah.
And I don't drink it, for
Yeah.
that one
Yeah.
because I'm just like, they've been through stuff or whatever,
Yeah.
or I know that they
Yeah.
have, or they're not, I know they're not going to.
Yeah.
So I'm not going to even go there or offer.
Yeah, absolutely. But you know what? I learned a really important lesson from an alcoholic that I was married to for almost 30 years. He was in recovery. He was in recovery and he was been sober for many, many years. But he said to me one time, Debbie, you got to quit worrying about me drinking. You are welcome to have a drink in front of me because if I wanted to stop at a liquor store on the way to an AA meeting, I could.
Right.
This
isn't, it's
I'm
not
100% responsible for myself.
100% responsible
and
for you.
100% responsible to you.
Right.
Not for you.
Yeah, and that's a really great. I love that 100%
Yeah.
responsible part.
Yeah.
My ex-wife and I went through counseling right up to and even after, and that was one of the things that we learned a lot was you're both 100% responsible for this.
Yeah.
This is created mutually. Whatever anybody says about anything,
Absolutely.
we're all responsible for how we got here and our part of all of it.
And I want to tie something in here that just came into my head is one of the things that I found is you become like the people you hang around. Right. So what I find too is that when I find myself going into maybe some negative talk or into some of that committee in my head that I'm not as accustomed to anymore because I'm just not available for it anymore. I'm like, ooh, okay, wait a minute. I'm 100% responsible for myself, but where am I being influenced by that?
Right.
And sometimes family, because let's face it, families are complex and we go back to those roles that we've played, right? And we can waffle back and forth. So that's an example of one, and my family and I, we've worked really hard to not go into that, but we still do. It's just a pattern. But I wanted to bring that up because as you talk about that self-talk and those things that go on in your brain and how you look at things, you are influenced by people. You're influenced by what you read, by what you put into your head.
Some would say past lives even before.
Oh, absolutely.
The generations that came before you and the circumstance and that energy.
Yeah.
Whatever it is in your DNA.
Absolutely. And when you say that, it's interesting because a lot of clients that I work with, a lot of people that I know have money stories around scarcity. And if you think back just a couple of generations, those are people that lived through the Great Depression.
My parents.
Yeah. And so then it just
absolutely
continues
I definitely
down.
have experienced that in my they both were born in the late 20s. I mean, they're right in the middle of it. This whole and lots of people that are my age now have dealt with that whole lack conversation. And fortunately pretty early I was able to drop that and go, that's not actually my problem.
Yeah, that's not me. Although it's funny how that manifests. The other day I was looking at my electric bill and I'm like, wow, the electric bill went up a whole lot and I haven't done anything different. I wonder what's that's about. And I play this little game with myself about, can I use just the same or less than I did last year? And I'm like, ooh, hello, that's an interesting way that scarcity shows up, right?
Right.
I hear my dad say, go put another layer of clothes on if you're cold.
Right. Yeah. Well, and I keep bringing it up because we're just it's top of mind. But that Big Leap book, the other thing that he goes into depth on, which I thought was really fascinating, is this whole the relationship with your family and your potential and really your siblings, and not wanting to outshine.
Yeah, I run into that a lot.
I don't want to, and talk about not aware of it. Not even being consciously aware of. I can't be that great because then I'll outshine them, and that's not fair.
Yeah.
That whole I want balance.
We make contracts.
I want balance in my family, and so it would be bad. And then when you're aware of it, you're like, screw that.
Well, and what I found is then
my family doesn't really have a lot of that. Everybody's kind of great about just going to do their thing, but it's there.
It totally is. And the really cool thing is I run into clients that all the time are that way. And then if they go talk to them, they find that that's not the case at all.
Exactly. That's a reality.
It's our made up
We've made up all
reality.
This stuff because the truth of it is anybody that really cares about you in your life wants you to be so great and succeed. right?
Yeah.
They want all us to be happy. They want us to be doing the things that we're happy. I'm a people pleaser guy, so
Yeah.
being able to figure that out at a fairly early age
Yeah.
has helped. But not I don't know, early, but into my 40s, I was like, oh, that plays a big part of me just always not taking care of me enough.
Yeah.
And it isn't really what anybody else wants. I mean, everybody wants me to be great.
And we
And I
take
want
that on
everybody
as
else
an
to be great.
identity.
Right.
Because I'll tell people when they say, oh, I'm a recovering perfectionist or I'm a perfectionist, I'm like, okay, back up. Are you really a perfectionist, or is that a behavior that's been manifested by something else, right? Like, or is manifesting itself because of something else that's happened that now you feel like you have to be perfect because you're seeking love, validation, whatever those things are. But then we start to create our identity around those when in fact it's really not our identity. It's just a behavior.
Right.
Yeah.
So, all of that said, what do you do? And right? I know what you do, but tell us what you do. And you've got a really cool platform, a really cool website that does that. But you help a lot of people, and you've had a big background, particularly in business. And I want to talk about that because we both talk to help organizations a lot, right?
Yeah. So the reason I laughed is sometimes it's hard to really quantify and put into.
I can't describe what I do.
Right, exactly. So what I tell people is I help entrepreneurs make a lot of money doing what they love without sacrificing what's important to them. Because I do see a lot of entrepreneurs that their life revolves around the business, which if they love that, that's fine. But most of them, they feel really bound up versus let's think about what I want my life to look like, and the business is a conduit to that. Right?
Yeah. Create a great life first.
Absolutely. A lit up life.
Yeah.
See what I did there?
Life. As she segues to the name of the
That's
website.
right. And so for me, actually what I feel like I am is I'm a teacher. Like if I go back in my history, I started out teaching piano lessons when I was in high school.
My mom was a piano teacher.
Oh, really? Nice.
Yeah.
And I have a teaching degree. I teach at Gonzaga.
She was teaching when she was in her 80s.
Oh yeah, that's fun. Yeah. And I teach at Gonzaga still.
Oh, cool.
And, and I feel like I'm still a teacher, but I'm also an inspirer. I'm someone that connects people, and I'm a healer. And so when I'm working with people, and if I'm doing those 4 things, I am lit up. And so the reason I explain that is I work with private clients. I have group coaching that also occurs. I have a women's mastermind that runs for a year, and we have these 2 like really awesome retreat getaways. And the rest of it's all virtual. And then I do private clients. I have private clients that I do too. And although I follow a method, it's different because I want to customize it based on the person and what their needs are. And so we work on some of the same things. Everyone has money stories. Everyone has self-worth issues. Mm-hmm. There are certain just commonalities that we all have. And fortunately or unfortunately, people love to work on those things. Well, some people do. Let's put it that way. And what happens is I don't think we're ever done.
No.
Right? It's just another layer that we're going through. And I get to the point where I'm like, oh, isn't that interesting how that showed up again? Because I really want people to look at it through the lens of curiosity.
It's going to.
Absolutely.
This too shall pass, and this too shall come back.
Absolutely.
I always call it, my wife and I always talk about spiraling up.
Oh, yeah.
In a spiral, it goes down and goes up and goes down and goes up.
Because, it's 3-dimensional.
Yeah, and that's how life is, right? It's never just, and it shouldn't be, because the down stuff is where you learn.
Mm-hmm. And the reason I was kind of looking at you is at Gonzaga, one of the classes I teach, Dr. John Horsman, who's my mentor and created this, the servant leadership symbol is a spiral.
Oh, cool.
Because you're never in or out of it. It's just constantly moving, right? And the other thing I love what he says, and it's attributed to this spiral conversation, is that you're never at point A and you're never at point B. You're always in between. Because the minute you hit point B, it becomes point A, and you've seen another point B, so you're no longer on A.
Whoa. I need another
thoughts.
whiskey. That was a lot. No, I think I know what you're talking. The other, as you talked about that, a big piece of that is passion. Is the thing of what you're, I think that's the other part that really probably can merit a thought, connects us, because I have created a thing called Circle Plus Minus, which is I do with groups, and I facilitate that and kind of coach it, or individuals. And as as I talk about that and you talk about your lit up life, they're really a lot of the same stuff, just a different way to get there maybe.
Yeah.
And what Circle Plus Minus, my whole thought was I want to have the life I want to live, but I want to do what I love to do.
Yeah.
And not do the stuff I don't love to do.
Absolutely.
And I really believe that if as a person or as an organization, if you're doing the stuff if everybody's doing the stuff they love and the stuff they don't mind and not doing the stuff they hate, they're going to actually make more money, be more successful, be more profitable, and be happy, and actually keep people, that otherwise they would burn through.
Absolutely. It's the
so
universal
really
law of
important
vibration.
that everybody does what they love because they want to stay there.
Absolutely. And it's the universal law of vibration, which is what you're talking about with quantum physics, right? Because when you vibrate, like attracts like. So if you're vibrating down here, like if I have sales calls and all of a sudden everybody's like responding in the same way, I'm like, what am I putting out to attract that?
Right.
Right. And I can look at it through the lens of curiosity instead of judgment, because when we judge, then we start to spiral back down.
Right. And often there are people like, I can't believe I'm surrounded by people that are just problems for me or trouble for me or whatever. And I always go, well, what's the common denominator?
Right, wherever you go, there you are.
There you are. And I mean, I'm not to be, it isn't meant to be facetious or mean.
Right.
It's just, hey, if you're not happy with the people that are around you and they're not treating you great and they're not lighting you up, then you're responsible for that.
Absolutely.
Right?
Well, and I kind of think two things there. One is I think it's a mirror. Because if there's some kind of frustration or irritation, it's usually something that's being mirrored back to us that we don't like about ourselves.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah,
and that's that growth edge again, right? Like,
and having the guts enough to admit it and go, okay, I gotta. This is me. Owning stuff is super powerful.
Oh my gosh,
being vulnerable is super powerful. That's I think the things I've done. When I look back on my business, especially, just think the moments when I'm that have been really the points where things have taken off and been better.
Absolutely.
Because as an owner and as a manager and as a leader of a team, it's really hard to show weakness. But if it's done right and it's authentic, it's real and it's purposeful, it can be really powerful. Not something that you sort of make up and pretend.
Yeah.
It's got to be real. But when it is, it's a very effective tool. I don't know if that's the right word, but good things happen, I guess.
Absolutely. And I think too, when you do that as a leader, what happens is then it gives other people permission and it creates psychological safety so that they feel like they can also be vulnerable and they can make mistakes and you can learn from those mistakes, and it creates a completely different culture.
Yeah, everybody's okay to just be
Absolutely.
Be honest about it and get better.
Yeah. Which actually makes things happen a lot more efficiently and, to your point, more successfully, because then everybody's vibrating at this higher vibration versus I'm afraid that I'm going to get fired or whatever.
It's just way more fun. And it's, for me, it's always been about, people use the word culture a lot. It's like, what does that mean? It gets thrown around a lot.
Yeah, it does.
Pete Carroll has created a culture with the Seahawks. What? But it is. It's real. Yeah. And I've told people I've had the luxury of getting to work in tons of industries, telling stories. I mean, that's really what I do, is tell stories professionally. And it takes me to places. So if a client will say, well, we've got this great client, can you go talk to them at Lockheed Martin or Nike or Ben and Jerry's or wherever. And it's taken me to Twitter and all these really interesting Starbucks headquarters. And I've always had this theory, and you probably have visited lots of them because we'll segue into the Fortune 100 companies you work with. But when you walk in, I've always been struck by when I walk into that headquarters, wherever it is, Corner Booth Media, or you were struck when you walk in by how it felt here, right?
Right. The vibe.
I truly believe, as a brand marketing guy, that the feeling of what it's like when you walk into a corporate headquarters is the feeling of the brand.
Totally.
Do you think that's true?
I do. And there's a really good book out there right now that I've been taking some of my clients through called Vivid Vision. And James Cameron, and I think it's James Cameron. I say that now and it doesn't feel right.
Like the James Cameron? Like the
No. That's why I was like, wait a minute, maybe I'm getting my names confused. But if you look at Vivid Vision,
okay,
and he talks about creating a vision for 3 years out. You can have a longer vision, but like actually looking at 3 years. And he really focuses on and says, you need to figure out, what do you want your vibe to be? What do you want your digital vibe to be?
Kind of what culture is. Yeah,
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Your brick and mortar. What do you want people to feel when they come in?
The voice of what you push out on social media.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
and all of that needs to be congruent, or it's not, it's messed up.
Right. And you're not consistent, and your brand's
Absolutely.
not consistent. And I mean, that's where, it's what we do is help companies tell their story. So if it's not a consistent thing, it can really hurt it, So what brought you to Spokane? And you say Gonzaga. How did you get that connection? Because I know you not from here. You made the fatal mistake of saying you're a Kansas basketball fan.
I know.
If I'd known that, you probably wouldn't be sitting in that chair. But it was too late.
It is too late. Actually, I'm from Sandpoint, Idaho. So the panhandle of Idaho.
So you grew up in Sandpoint?
No, I did not.
Oh, you're from.
So I'm from there now, not Spokane.
You're not from there. You live
I'm not from there. I'm from the Midwest. I'm a Midwest girl that does what she should until I broke out of that.
Oh, there's your backstory.
Right? Until I broke out of that.
That's what drives you.
Not anymore.
Somewhere. Yeah, used to.
Not anymore. So I grew up in the Midwest, and I was born and raised mostly in Iowa. We moved to Denver and Chicago.
Where in Iowa?
Monticello. It's
okay.
between Des Moines and Anamosa.
Okay, I filmed in Cedar Rapids.
Yeah, it's not very far from Cedar Rapids.
Yeah, that was cool. And experienced a tornado there.
Oh, yeah.
During our shoot.
Yeah, that was the one place I'd been in a tornado,
I got to
too.
get on a plane tomorrow, and I know there's a tornado coming, but if I don't get this shot, I got nothing. Why'd I even come? And there are people like, you need to get in the cellar. I'm like, yeah, well, I
won't until I see it.
No, yeah, I'm staying, man.
Oh, that's so funny.
And we got it, and then it didn't even show up,
Yeah, that's funny. Yeah.
Fireflies.
Oh, yeah. That is one thing. I miss the blues. I miss good barbecue because I grew up mostly then in Kansas City. We settled in Kansas City, and I went to high school there and lived there for 30 years.
Yeah.
Or almost 30 years. And so I miss blues, I miss barbecue, and I miss the fireflies, like the lightning bugs.
I was just in Tennessee this last summer, seeing my brother in Nashville, and I'm like, they're it's unbelievable.
Yeah, I can't wait for the day to show my grandson, because
How did you get to Sandpoint then?
Yeah, so my best friend from college, we joke that we're our most expensive friends because we were in a sorority together and we paid for each other's friendship. She actually moved up here. She's so inspiring. She moved up here. She worked for the Division of Family Services in Jackson County, which is downtown Kansas City. She got tired of pulling kids out of crack houses and having to send them back and just quit and moved up here. Found out about a Verizon store and a two-way radio store that was for sale, and she started selling cell phones. And did that for many years. She's now a counselor, and we are in an office building together. Yeah. Oh, wow. And she actually winters in North Carolina, so I just got back from a 10-day road trip driving her out there because her husband was off on some other adventure.
Across America.
And it was fun. I think I want to do some road trips.
I actually would love that.
Yeah. I think I might do like 4 1-month road trips. And do like this West Coast kind of thing. Yeah. And the goal is, so anybody out there that's friends of mine's, be aware, because it's like finding people I know and staying with them on the way. And hanging out with them. Because that was part of what was so fun. We spent the night, one night in a hotel room. The rest of the time it was with friends and family.
Oh, that is actually cool. That'd be a really cool, I'd love to do that.
And then I want to do like an East Coast kind of thing. And then like down into Utah and Taos and all of that area. I love Taos. And then do kind of the whole Midwest thing and spend more time with my family.
My daughter and I are going to do we were right about to go, and then COVID hit. We were going to go do a kind of DC, Philadelphia, kind of U.S. history little jaunt for a week or two, and just go hang out at all the cool places.
Yeah, that would be fun.
Yeah, we got to do it. Now it's getting late. She's 23 and going to Paris.
Oh.
Yeah, so
I love Paris.
She's finishing her UW degree in Paris in March.
Oh, fun. Studying abroad.
Studying abroad from March, kind of end of March to beginning of June.
Oh, that's great.
So I got to go see her, don't I?
You do.
Yeah, and
you do.
You were just there.
I was there back in 2022. I was.
Not that long ago.
It wasn't that long ago. And I actually, prior to that, I had gone to China with the Coeur d'Alene Chamber.
Okay.
And I had never been out of North America. And so I kind of got the bug to travel. And so then I went to Paris.
You didn't get a bug in China.
No, I didn't.
That's a very different thing.
That is a very different thing.
Because I've been to China, and that is something to think about.
That is a very different thing. That's true. Linguistics are important.
It is the first thing that you kind of think about. Why do
That
you think
is
that you have to
true.
drink Mau Tai after every meal?
Exactly, to kill it off.
Kill it off. And my favorite part of being in China for 10 days, it seemed like a month, and it was awesome. Oh my God.
Yeah, it's pretty
I would
cool.
go back again. It is cool. Every basically village you go in or town or whatever has their own special Mau Tai.
Yes.
Oh, this is our very special Mau Tai. It's rubbing alcohol.
Exactly, and it
Essentially,
tastes like
Everclear.
it. Yes.
Tastes like Everclear. Oh yes, it's so much better than the last one.
Yeah. They take pride in their
They
own.
take so
Yes,
pride in
exactly.
their rubbing alcohol.
But yeah, so then I went to France with my business coach. There were 6 of us, actually, maybe 7, I don't remember. And we did a whole France, kind of stayed at the Hotel de Crillon right there on the square. I mean, it was beautiful.
Shops
It
are
was
the same.
fantastic. And then I stayed longer. I had a friend meet me over there, and
Yep.
then her husband met her in Portugal later, but then we went out into the outskirts, and France is just really cool.
Yeah, it is.
And I would like to go back someday. I have this thing, though. I went to Italy this last year with Gonzaga, actually.
Oh, cool.
I went and traveled by myself and then met up with a group that they're doing it again in 2024. It's a farm to market to table experience in Florence. And
Is it tied to Gonzaga and Florence?
yeah, it is.
Yeah.
It is, and it was a great experience. And I don't know where I was going with that, but I love Tuscany.
you were
I
just
kind
in
of
Italy
like
last year.
yeah, and I kind of like the outskirts. And I've just decided there's so many places I want to go that I probably won't go back to the same country until I've been to those other places.
Oh yeah.
But I would like to go back to the Dolomites. I'd love to go to the south of France, and I'm gonna nerd
Yeah,
out
south
and
of
geek
France.
out here for a second, but I really got into now her name is escaping me. The Joy of Cooking.
Oh.
Julia Child. There's a woman.
Julia Child.
Right. You do that well. But there's this chef.
That's more of a Dan Aykroyd doing Julia Child than actually.
Well,
Julia
that's
Child.
yeah, you're right. It does sound like that. But she bought her house. This woman bought her house and has a friend that's a chef, and they do cooking classes in Julia Child's house.
Oh yeah, I heard about this.
Yeah, and it's on like HBO or some weird thing.
Right.
But I would love to go do that. I think that
it.
would be fun. I will, but it's a little further down on my list.
Yeah. You get stuff to do.
But yeah.
Well, and traveling is just a huge piece of all of it, really.
It is.
I don't know.
Well,
that's what I want to do more of.
And I've started to build it into my business, right? Because that's part of it too. Like when you build your business model, if part of what I want to do is travel, I'm building that in. So the masterminds, we're going to Costa Rica in April and the Dominican Republic with another mastermind. And then we're going to Belize.
Wow.
So I'm just trying to kind of pick some places and do some
Okay,
things.
I'll go. Okay, I'll go. Okay.
I
You don't have
forced
to beg.
Take one for the team.
I think this may not be your quote, but it was somebody we talked about. And the name is escaping me of a website that you kind of connected me to, but happiness arrives when you're not looking for it.
Yeah,
Which
one
is
of my
kind
mentors.
of part of that whole travel. Speaking of traveling and
Yeah.
doing the things that you just love to do that light you up, that's when you run into more of it, right?
Absolutely, because
so many people are like, I'm never going to find the person.
well, and here's the thing.
Or whatever.
What you focus on gets bigger. So the point being is if I'm focused on I'm not happy, and it even sets us up a little bit in the Declaration of Independence in the pursuit of happiness, like gives the impression we're not already happy.
Right. It does.
It does.
It's built into our DNA.
Totally.
I've never thought of that.
Totally. And so what happens...
We're never going to get there,
Yes, we are.
No, but I mean, that's how we're...
Yeah, that's the wiring.
That's actually in our DNA. So no wonder we're like, oh, why haven't we gotten there on civil rights? Why haven't we gotten there on treating each other better? Why haven't we gotten
Because
there
we're focusing on the gap.
because we're in the pursuit of it.
Right.
If we had just said, we're there, man.
Well, and not only, and because we all are. So happiness comes in the absence of searching for it, means look today in your life where you're happy and focus on those areas that you're happy on, because then all of a sudden happiness gets bigger.
Right. Right. And like attracts like, right?
Absolutely. It's just like I used to
create more of
ask my son when he'd come home from school, how was your day today? Guess what I got?
I don't know.
Fine. Or
Fine.
I don't know. I forgot.
Yeah.
Right? Like
Or-
the three.
Or nothing.
Right, exactly. And so then I started asking the question, what was the best thing
More
that happened to
grunting
you?
than anything.
Oh, that's a true statement. But then I started asking the question, what was the best thing that happened to you today?
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden, we're looking for good things that have happened.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. What'd you do? What'd you do great today?
Well, and not even so much what you did great, but what happened. What was a great thing that happened?
That's a great thing that happened.
Yeah. And the only reason I correct that is I come from a family where achievement was really important.
Okay,
and so just like we were talking about perfectionism and those types of things, I've done a lot of work around, it's okay to rest. It's okay to not, I move fast. I do a lot of things and my day is full.
Yeah, I have a friend that that always talked about her. That was one of the things her dad always said when they got to the kitchen table was, "What did you do great today?"
Yeah.
And I never thought about the pressure that must have put on
to achieve.
And boy, was this person an achiever? So extraordinaire.
Yeah.
But you're right. It's not a balance.
Yeah.
If you just.
Yeah. And then we make a loyalty pact with them. So that's kind of that contract I was talking about, where you don't want to make, I don't want to make my dad wrong for wanting me to do well, but it's not it's not helpful to me.
Right. You have to honor yourself.
Right. Yeah. And it's okay. It's good to want to achieve things, but not at the expense of your own happiness, your own self. Right.
So how did you get connected to all this? And I know you do a lot of work with bigger companies, and I do too. I work with big sort of, and medium and small. And I sort of wanted to talk about, first how you got to there and what do you find the differences are with them?
Yeah. And actually I don't I worked at large companies, which I did some of the same things that I do with clients today.
Right. But you've been inside those.
Yes, absolutely. And so ask me that question again. Sorry, I got fixated on that.
I guess the first one was just what brought you to this kind of work?
Yeah. Okay. So interestingly enough, back in the day, and I'm going to age myself, when I very first started in corporate, I worked for a company.
I already aged myself, so it's
that's
okay.
true. You said your age, didn't you? I grew up in the 80s too.
Big 80s, man.
That's right. And everything's coming back. Absolutely.
Hey, we get shit done.
We do. I have decals that I have that says "Get shit done."
What would this world be without us? I don't know. It could go in a different way too, but maybe better. I don't think so. I like to not think so.
I think we're good. But so I am aging myself in the fact that I went to work for a company that then became Sprint, publishing and advertising, and we said we worked for Spa because it sounded so much better. And
that's funny.
It was funny. And I actually am really grateful because that company, we worked really hard together and we played really hard together. And there's a lot of us that still stay in touch. And it was the first experience I had with servant leadership, but I didn't know it. But I sold Yellow Pages over the phone.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
Boy, that'll straighten you up.
It will. I was an education major, and at that time it was like, we're short on teachers, and so all of a sudden this influx of teachers, and numerous times I went and applied, and they said they wanted a high school basketball coach instead of a female teacher, and I'm like, okay, I'm out of here. So
but
that's
you're a Kansas fan, so you could have lied. They would have believed it.
You're fixated on KU. Well, before him though. Remember?
Oh man,
Roy
was there.
Yeah.
Oh,
and
Roy.
there's something about
Roy Williams was at Kansas before.
He was, right. And for me, it's an experience.
For
a long time. And there's something about sitting in the old stadium where basketball was invented.
Right.
The Naismith Stadium.
I know.
So sitting, because they have not torn that down and made it bigger.
No.
They just charge more for the tickets now.
That sounds like Gonzaga.
Yeah, exactly. But Gonzaga's a lot
As a season ticket holder, I'll tell you, yeah.
If they ever play KU, I'm calling you.
Oh, we're going.
To get a ticket.
I'm in. No, I'll go with you. We're
okay,
going. Yeah.
Good.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's how my parents had tickets for the KU game, and my sister went to school there. So
it's just in the fabric, isn't it?
It totally is.
And that is similar here.
It is, but you know what's interesting?
What's the difference? Because we're quarter century now. It is changed the fabric. I just had this 2 days ago, which who knows when this will come out. But the guest before was Chris Stanford, the athletic director at Gonzaga.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So we talked about Big 12.
Yeah.
Gonzaga going to go and join those guys? Because honestly, if
they've built a great program.
Well, if they do join. KU is coming here.
Absolutely, they are. And to me, that was a big difference between moving here and Kansas City, because Kansas City is all about basketball. We have the Big 12 championship tournaments there. Right. We have the NAIA there. Right. We have a lot. We've got, at the time, Mizzou was still in the Big 12, but is now I think they're in the SEC. Mm-hmm. But, all of those, it was like an influx of basketball. And then I move here and people are like, what's basketball? And then Gonzaga starts building their team.
Oh yeah.
Right, and then
so
it
you've
becomes
seen
a little
that
more exciting.
The last.
Oh, absolutely.
Years. Okay, yeah.
Absolutely.
How long have you been in this region then?
10 years.
Okay.
Yeah, decade.
Yeah. Well, Gonzaga's been building this for 20.
They have. But for me to see it, because, back in Kansas, we're all like, oh, they don't play very good schools.
Oh, yeah, right. Oh, I see. Yeah.
That becomes
no Final Fours
the mantra,
the last 10
right?
years, so we don't count.
Yeah.
I understand.
I'm not representing all KU fans, but
that's
yes.
all East Coast, let's just say. East of the
Yeah.
Mississippi.
Kentucky, North Carolina.
Those West Coast
They're a
teams,
little
whatever
snobby.
they're on later, nobody sees them.
Yes.
They must not be very good. That's exactly what goes on out here.
Although one time,
But then we
were
get
in-
like 8 Sweet 16s in a row. And
True. Well, and they built a great program, and they've
No, nobody.
They're a
disagrees.
powerhouse now.
Nobody disagrees with that.
Yeah.
Yeah, but it
Yeah.
is different. And Gonzaga's experiencing that right now. If they were
Yeah.
in the Big 12, they would be easily into the NCAA tournament, only losing 5 games.
Yeah.
But when you're in the West Coast Conference, they're on the outside looking in right now.
Yeah.
As we record this, I think they'll be okay. But
Yeah.
we'll see.
Hopefully they will. It'd be fun. Yeah, but
Well-
that's where I started, was Yellow Pages in Kansas City, and
Crazy.
Yeah, and I was
Crazy.
there for
So
10
what made
years.
you? What was your big leap from that to this kind of, coaching world? And
Yeah, so my big leap, because as a leader, and then I moved up the ranks and became an executive there, and then I was an executive at Citibank and ran for 5, if you include India. Training and development was my gig.
Oh, that was your
right.
world.
So
Okay.
a lot of coaching, a lot of training, all of those types of things, human development
Yeah.
type of
Universities inside of, right?
Correct.
Yeah,
Correct.
creating the university inside the
Yes.
corporate
Yes.
world. Yeah, that was
Yes.
very hot for a long time.
Yes, it
We
was.
did a lot of work for in-house big corporate universities.
Yep, absolutely. So then I came up here. So I'm kind of embarrassed to say this, but when I was looking to get my master's, because I knew I was asked to move to Tucson because they were doing work at Citibank and changing. I worked in a building with 2,500 employees. We went down to 200. And they said, we don't need a person
That's a big one.
sitting
That's a big
here.
cut.
It was huge.
Holy
And they moved
moly.
a lot of that work to other sites in the US, right? Because this is a global company that's like huge.
Right. You can stay here, but you just got to move.
You just have to go to Tucson.
Yeah.
And I said, I'm not a hot weather person. And so I actually had gone online to say, okay, being at the level I'm at, I at least have to have my master's. And so I just looked up leadership, and Gonzaga popped up.
Well, that's awesome. Because
I didn't know where Gonzaga was, though. That's the embarrassing
So what
part.
year would this have been?
This would have been 2012-ish.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, because it really is. I mean, we're doing some work with that, with the School of Leadership
yeah.
Studies.
Yeah,
right
that's
now.
right.
And it really was one of the. It is one of the oldest in the country in terms of leadership studies, and really they are.
But the school is not that old. Like the School of Leadership
School is
Studies.
not
within
that
it.
old,
Yeah.
but it really is one of the first in the country to
Absolutely.
to kind of own that and
And
build
to do it
and
online.
and to lean into it
Yep.
and to do it online. They were
And
one
do
of the
it
first.
well.
Yeah, we did a whole campaign for that as it launched out early on.
Yeah.
And that's where when I mentioned all those corporate headquarters
Yeah.
I had gone to, several of them were through that campaign that we did for Gonzaga.
yeah. Well, I
Ben and
probably was
Jerry's
one of them too.
you would have been.
Because then I called and I'm like, okay, let's do this. I signed up.
It worked.
And then I realized it was in Spokane, and here's my best friend. Spokane, that's right. If you're on an airline, I always laugh so bad because they mispronounce it. But so I came up to visit my best friend, and I'm like, wow, Gonzaga is like not that far. So
Right. That's a
I was
real
here.
university.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So then after I took the package, I came up here and worked with a friend of mine who started HRG here in Spokane and sold it to her employees.
Wow.
And started another business and asked me to come be her CFO. And I laughed. I said, just because I work for Citibank doesn't mean I know finance. I'm a training and development gal. I haven't balanced my checkbook since high school. Are you sure?
You're perfect.
That's basically what she said. I'm like, okay. So I'm self-taught on a lot of that. But anyway, through
That's a cool experience, though.
it was really cool.
It's a good lens to see the world.
It was,
It is.
and because it was a medium-sized business, kind of small actually, we had 55 employees. We were in 16 states, so I got to learn all about doing taxes in multiple states, and
See?
all
The
of
gifts
that.
that come.
Oh, totally. And I truly feel like if I had not worked there, I would not own my own business today,
Yeah.
because everything was an 800 number at Citibank, and I became all of those 800 numbers. So I did everything but sales and recruiting, which had been a big part of my background. So I learned a ton.
But you're in the middle of that. You're going, what the hell am I doing this for?
I was.
Right? And then now you look back, right? I always say that when you look back at the things, at the fabric of all the path that led you here, you look at stuff where you're like, I remember thinking that was really Not sure why it was doing it.
Yeah.
But now you can't imagine not having done that.
Absolutely.
Right. It did serve a purpose. It always, every step kind of has served a purpose. Right?
Absolutely.
I think.
Absolutely. And so, unfortunately, my friend, her daughter and sister also owned the company. And I moved here on January 20th, 2014. And on April 1st, I thought my then husband and my best friend and her husband were playing a joke on me. And they came in, and she and her husband were headed to Honduras, and they wrecked their plane, and she died. Oh. So it was like one of those, holy cow.
Oh, wow.
I don't really know what I'm doing.
Wow. That's an out-of-body
and
experience.
Yeah, it was terrible.
Yeah.
And so I kind of ran the business for a year while her daughter and sister mourned. I mean, they still were involved, but for me, it felt like some divine intervention that I was there to be able to do that for them.
That's why you were there.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
That, and for my grandchildren. I had a friend visit me one time and met my son's girlfriend at the time. She's a 4th generation homesteaded Sandpoint girl.
Oh, man.
And Lori looked at me and she said, if you didn't move up here for any other reason, you moved here for your grandchildren.
Oh.
And I do believe that, because I have a grandson now, and they're expecting another one in July. So
that's good. Yeah. How's your grandson?
He's 2.5. So much fun.
Wow.
So much fun.
That hasn't happened yet. Nick just got engaged, so we'll see.
Yeah, it's so much fun getting on the ground and playing cars.
I can see it.
Yeah.
I can see it. I don't know if I'm quite ready yet, but I don't know if anybody's ready.
You know, I didn't think I was either. Because what is it? We have this persona. These are like those stories we have in our head.
I'm now old.
Well, and everywhere it shows
there.
Grandparents with super gray hair and like saggy skin. I'm like, what?
It's true. It's super true.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
that's what brought me here.
Okay.
Yeah.
And now you as a coach, you're working with all kinds of different levels, though.
I am. I have some.
What do you
clients.
like about the bigger levels and the smaller levels? What's the how are they different and how are they similar?
Some of the ones that are bigger I like because we get into more of the leadership aspect, meaning leading people. You still are talking leadership because you're talking about leading yourself and leading the people around you. But I do like working with those. I have a client in Hayden.
Well, they have time in a little bit more.
Yes.
The bigger the organization, at least
yes.
they can invest in things like this.
Yes, absolutely. So Uncle Dan's Powdered Ranch, little plug for him.
Totally. Love
Chris Stevens is the owner of that, and I love working with him. Like, he has a group of people. It's a small but
where
mighty
are they
group.
Located?
They're in Hayden.
No way.
Yeah, I think they're moving to Post Falls soon, but who knows?
Wow.
But like, it's so fun to work on the business strategy of that and the leadership strategy. But then part of what I say too is a lot of coaches focus on the business piece of it, or they focus on the mind piece of it. They're putting the two together is what's so important, because we can have a great plan, but it doesn't work if you don't figure out what's stopping you.
That's right. Yeah, or if you don't implement it.
Well, and usually you don't implement because something's holding you back.
Holding you back, yeah.
And then we beat ourselves up because why am I just not doing this? You know? And so we have to uncover, and that's where the neuroscience comes in, because it's a belief. Somewhere we've gotten a belief that's turned into action, that turns into a habit. You know, like I talk a lot about that. So if you think about, we have stories all the time that are given to us. Like this whole idea of working so hard that you were talking about before, it's actually easier to make a lot of money than it is a little money.
It's true.
And you can make a lot of money and work less hours than you work in a 40-hour-a-week job.
And should.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You actually will if you do that.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah. But getting there.
It's so counterintuitive to what we're taught.
It's so scary to jump off that train that's moving 100
It looks like the Grand Canyon, too.
Yeah.
I always say, and then you turn around and realize it was a crack in the sidewalk once you take the step.
Right. But getting that, and so you help people get there.
I do.
Yeah.
And what I do, and part of why I always
awesome.
say to people, I typically have people sign a year contract, because we work on digging through some of that. Now, I will say too, I'm not a counselor. I'm not a trained counselor. And so I have a lot of counselors in my back pocket that if it goes towards an area that I know I'm not equipped, I don't want to cause harm, I refer them and say, you might want to go work on this piece.
Because it doesn't enter that world. I mean,
No.
you are uncovering a lot.
Yeah. And so we dig around in some of that stuff. And then once they do that, like there's this belief that happens that drops in for them and they just skyrocket. And then we start working on the plans and the business stuff. And
Right.
sometimes that's frustrating for people because they want to work on the achievement. They want to work on all the things that we need to do.
Right.
Okay, well, we can, but you're going to be pissed off in 3 months because you're going to be right back where you are today because there's something holding you back.
The plan's not going to go.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And usually we're gaining something from that, right? Like if there's something that we're doing that we know we don't want to do, usually it's because we're gaining attention.
There's a payoff.
Or love. Yeah.
You're getting a payoff
It's hard
somehow.
and it's hard to face sometimes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, and
Yeah.
plans, creating strategic plans,
Yeah.
which is kind of what you're doing in
Yeah.
some way.
Absolutely.
I create those for clients all the time where when we start to really help the best clients we can help, we do a strategic, we call brand story planning.
Yeah.
And people a lot of times clients will say, well, is that really worth investing in? Like, why should we do that? And it's remarkable the clients that don't do it, that eventually always come back around to eventually needing to do it because you can't design a house you can't build a house without a design. You can't do anything really great, and we can't make great stories and great content and build brands if they don't do the work.
And let me ask you this though.
So
do you find, because, well, I'm not going to tell you why, but do you find that you need to revisit that?
The plan?
Yeah, like the market brand and the plan and kind of where you're at. Do you need to revisit that every few years?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's what I found too.
I always look at it like this is 3 to 5 years for you, but if it's done right, you have reached such a level of success that it's time now to just reimagine what's the next phase of it.
Yeah.
And that's happened several times now. I've been doing that kind of particular work, which basically gets to the heart of organizations have a real hard time telling their story, and so they just don't. And oftentimes it's like, wow, they're a really great organization, but they just don't. They're not telling the good stuff. It's because there's so much of it. Often they don't know where to start.
Yeah,
and
that's
really
true.
hard. Who's going to do that, and how do I do it, and who internally can do that? Nobody can do that internally.
Yeah.
I don't think you can tell your own story.
Yeah, you're too close to it.
It's really hard. You're really close to it.
Yeah.
So they hire us to tell their story and to do it in a way that the best way for me to do that is to really have them do the work and just to guide them through the process of, I need to know what your goals are for what that looks like.
Yeah.
And what audiences are you talking to here? Like, who are you trying to convince that this brand is great? And often people, that is such a complex question. the what do you want is very hard.
Yeah.
What are the goals you're trying to accomplish? And we get through that pretty good. Who are the audiences talking to? They can do it, but it's never one.
Yeah.
It's a lot. Internally, externally for an organization, all kinds of that.
Yeah.
And I often, as much as I can, invite CFOs to these because they have to be the ones who sign this.
Yeah.
And if they're just going, what is this stuff?
Right.
Why am I paying for that? No CFO wants to do that.
Right.
But whenever they're engaged in it, they're like, this is the best thing we could ever do.
Yeah.
And then at the heart of the work is, what are the stories you wish people knew about you they don't know? What is it that you wish people knew about your organization that if they knew it, it would change how you are and what you do?
Yeah.
And if they just knew this, and I don't know any executive especially, but at least C-suite team that doesn't think about that all the time and get frustrated by it.
Absolutely.
So that opens up everybody. That is really the heart of the work, and it's super fun. And I end up with a giant whiteboard of stories.
Yeah.
And usually those stories start off right from the beginning. They're giving me stories, so I have to put them on a parking lot. We'll come back to that. But the stories are really what it's about. And if you can tell the right stories, then you're going to make it. I think I got to stop for a second. Hey, Zach?
He's got his headphones on.
Zach?
Or nope.
I got a beep.
Oh, okay.
Beep. I'm
battery?
assuming it means battery.
It does.
I knew it. It's one of the many. It can't be my camera.
It is.
Then we could have kept going.
You just have such a
We could have kept going.
energetic vibe that it's
Right. As long as your camera doesn't go down, we're fine. we can use They've seen enough of me on this thing.
That's awesome.
But there I am downplaying. I guess I can have whiskey then.
Then you can. You can fill your cup. You still got ice.
Then we can start. Although we'll probably keep this in.
Is that a
It's
one
way
ice
more
cube?
interesting. Yeah, it's one big one. Mm-hmm. That was maybe too much.
My dad likes to drink it with the circle ones.
Oh yeah, we have some of those. They're in the shape of a golf ball.
Oh, that's great with the little divots in it too.
Yeah.
Oh, that's awesome.
I know.
That's a good Christmas or Father's Day present. Thank you. Actually,
It is.
His birthday's coming up February 17th. That better.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh, you're married to a Pisces.
No. That's my dad.
Oh, it's your dad. Oh,
Yeah.
I'm mine's
not
coming
married
up.
anymore.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
I'm a Pisces.
Got divorced in 2020, right before
I'm
COVID.
sorry. Divorce
okay.
is so horrible.
Yeah, after 30 years together, it was time.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
No.
We're both happier because
Yeah,
of it.
that's right. Yeah.
And we're both friends. Like, he just had some surgery stuff, and he called me and said,
Yeah. No, my ex-wife and I have gotten to a really good place. We went to the Final Four together.
Oh, you did? Fun.
When Gonzaga went to
Yeah.
Indianapolis.
Oh, that's fun.
It was. And
That's
we
fun.
always do opening day with the Mariners.
Oh,
We take our
yeah.
kids and the four of us go
That's fun.
and watch opening day. It's awesome.
Yeah. I
it's
always loved to
great
go see the Royals. And the funny thing was I was a freshman in college
Kauffman Stadium.
in 1985 when it was George Brett and St. Louis. So it was Kansas City and St. Louis.
I remember this.
We went
Is
to
this the Pine Tar deal?
I don't know. No.
When
It
George
might be.
got all pissed that there was pine, that he got thrown.
Maybe.
threw
I
out
didn't
his-
pay that
they
much
threw him out.
attention.
Threw out his bat or something. Said Pine Tar on it.
Oh, maybe so.
He went crazy.
All
I
I
met
was-
George Brett.
Yeah, he's a good guy. And I was a freshman in college, and at the time we were right in the center of the state, Central Missouri State University. It's not that now, but
Missouri.
no, that drives me crazy. That's like I'm doing my worst. There's no R in Wash.
Washington State.
Yeah. And it was so funny though because one of the fraternities had a house that they took bleachers and put 2 sets of bleachers. There were 2 kegs and a small TV in the corner, and all the St. Louis people had to sit on one side, and all the Royals had to sit on the other side.
Oh, that's fantastic.
Yeah, it was pretty cool.
Wow,
It was pretty fun.
Wow.
So then when they won the World Series,
Oh,
when my son was in college, the last time they had done that was 1985.
Wow, that's right. That was
Yeah.
the last time they were there.
Yeah.
Holy
So all these
cow.
T-shirts
I remember
party
that.
like it's 1985, and
I remember that whole
Yeah.
series. Wow. Well, and I'm a long-suffering Mariner fan. So
Yeah.
the only team that has
true.
never been to the World Series.
Seriously.
Seriously.
Wow. I don't know baseball as well.
But they've been around, 50 years, not 150 like some of these clubs. So
That's kind of like my son. He was a huge Dallas Cowboy fan for many, many years. And then he's like, I don't like the owner, so why am I sticking with them?
Who likes
And then he
Jerry
switched to the
Jones?
Chiefs. And
Come
the other day
on.
he said to me, he goes, because he's an 8th grade science teacher. And he said, yeah, Mom, because go Chiefs. But
yeah.
he goes,
Go Chiefs, go.
yeah, when I was in school, middle school and high school, we all learned to hate the Patriots. And he goes, but what I realized today is that now this generation, they all hate the Chiefs.
they do hate the Chiefs. Yeah. And Taylor Swift showed up to make it even more.
I know, right? But here's the interesting thing about that is I think about the
The
fact
Kansas
that
City Swifts.
that's actually pretty good. She's actually created a whole
what
lot
it
of
seems
money
like.
influence
Oh,
into the
dude.
NFL. It's crazy.
Oh, yeah, no.
But here's something I want to tie back to
not
what
by
we were
accident.
talking about, right? Like it's so counterintuitive for people to be successful and continue to be successful without people coming in and trying to tear them back down. So a lot of entrepreneurs get really nervous about being super successful because they deep down subconsciously worry about what other people are going to say.
Okay, we got to do that one again. So
Okay,
say it again. Take me through that one more time.
Okay, I will. So, like, if you think about how people hate the Chiefs, or they hated Brady, right? Because he's so successful.
The Yankees.
They're so good.
They're so good. You hate them. Right.
Right?
Well, Gonzaga gets that a little bit. And so does
KU,
KU.
absolutely.
Oh, I hate those guys because they win
Absolutely.
all the time. Right.
But it's because we feel uncomfortable with all of this people having so much success. And
We
so
want
what
we want to balance it out or something.
I don't know. And so people
Pursuit of
will
happiness.
tear they will tear people down, which is the whole like Facebook thing, right?
Oh, they
like,
totally tear it down.
And so what happens is a lot of entrepreneurs get this message in their mind that they're not going to be loved anymore, that people aren't going to like them,
If
that
I'm
they're going to
successful.
lose all these friends. And sometimes that does happen.
It does.
But because as you level up, other people either level up with you or they don't.
Right.
It's like a hermit crab. You
Right.
know, like you got this little village of hermit crabs, and the law of sacrifice says you've outgrown that shell, and so you move into a different shell, and these people don't come with you.
Right. They're comfortable staying there. Yeah,
right?
yeah.
And other people will come with you,
Right?
right?
No, it's true.
And so it's interesting because it plays out everywhere. And I was talking to someone the other day about this whole Taylor Swift thing and how it's really imperative to be careful. Like if you have young girls and boys around, if people are saying, oh, they need to quit showing Taylor Swift at this, whatever. I get it's a little annoying sometimes, but it's like she didn't ask for it. And it's giving the communication that when you say that girls need to be small.
Right.
And I thought, wow, I had never thought about it that way. Right. But again, here's a woman who's super, I mean, she's up there with Johnny Cash and people, Willie Nelson, that have won like mega awards.
No. I mean, she's
and it's shocking though how
success.
people are like,
There's a lot
bashing.
of haters.
Oh my gosh.
A lot of haters.
It's really amazing to me. And that goes back to you are who you hang around with.
Yeah, no kidding. Right. Oh, that's interesting.
And so what vibration do you want to be at? What do you want to attract?
Well, and that kind of circling back to the work that we do on the story piece, that part is very interesting because the clients that I work with, them to tell that story, it's hard sometimes too.
Yeah.
They'll leave stuff out that I have to dig through. And I'm like, wait a minute, why don't you tell me this is your 70th anniversary? Or, why don't you tell me that these, it's not that big a deal. I'm like, no, it actually is a big deal. And I've had a couple instances here, and there's a CEO of a company here that was very public, and a lot of people resented because he was very successful and he made a lot of money.
Yeah.
And so people love to say, well, I don't like that guy, know. And I'd done a project that told kind of his story and honored him at the end of his career. And his wife came up at the end after seeing it, and she said, thank you so much. You're the first time that I've seen him honored this way. And the crux of the story was that I didn't know, having lived here my entire life, that this guy was born in this town, lived just down the street from me in a small, post-war house with lots of siblings, went to public school, worked his way up to Gonzaga, worked his way up to the top all the way through. I had no idea that he was one of us. Yeah. That came from literally the same neighborhood that I did.
Wow.
And I think of him differently because he is one of us. So I'm like, the fault really lies in him and that organization for not telling us. Like, you should have told us and celebrated that he's from here and he's made it all, that he started in Spokane, he's a Spokane guy, and he's made it all the way through. But the message was, it's not about me. Yeah. It's not about me. This is about everybody else here. No, actually it is about you. Yeah. And I think CEOs a lot do the disservice of their brand and their organization and themselves by thinking, this really isn't about me. No, you're in a leadership position for a reason. And it should be about you to certain regards. We need to know your story. And had this community known that story, it would have really treated him and his family very differently, I think.
Absolutely.
And that brand very differently. And it would think about it in a very different way now. You know what I mean?
Absolutely, Frank.
Because if you're like, I'm so proud of him, good, I hope you make $10 million.
Yeah, it's like being a Mariners
fan. As opposed to,
that
guy makes way too much money. And,
absolutely.
Like, who says? Yeah. Yeah, that whole mindset is, I think there's a generation, and that younger baby boomer particularly is in that world, and I think that Gen Xers like us too.
Well, and it goes back to, I think too, like some of the generational things where if you're not super visible, you're considered humble. Right. These are those messages where
that's the messages that he and I got, because my parents were of that post-war generation, the greatest generation. You don't brag, man.
Right.
So
and helping people understand it's not bragging, but it's giving people information.
It's how you do it.
To be absolutely,
and
it's the intention.
If you're a person that isn't a braggadocious person and you share that's not considered that. Jerry Jones is bragging all the time.
Right.
Come on, Donald Trump is bragging all the time. Like, he friggin' that's their MO.
Yeah,
this guy's not that guy. He wasn't those guys.
Right.
So it's okay, but it is in that. It's all back to the same stuff you're talking about, how we kind of perceive that.
Absolutely.
So that story work, really is a big piece to getting that uncovered. And once we figured that out, what I realized was, man, there's a massive amount of stories these guys. Every organization is usually drowning in them.
Well, and that's what I love about people like you and Meredith. because I've struggled with that.
Yeah.
And I had other marketing firms that I paid to do the same thing. I can't tell you how many times I've done that brand storying, right? As my business has evolved. And because my genius is not that.
Right.
And that's one thing I say to entrepreneurs. If you're stopping yourself from making revenue because you think you need to do something on your own, like create your own branding message and all of that stuff, go hire it.
Right.
Because you're costing yourself money by not having it.
And you'll never do it as well.
Oh,
I
never.
can't do it.
Never.
I mean, you know, we work on our own stuff internally here, and
Yeah.
I got a really good crew that does it, but I can't. Promoting this podcast has been a really fun thing, and we've done it to practice on our other brands.
Yeah.
We work
Yeah,
on, so we
that's
try
awesome.
stuff. We can try on the podcast,
Yeah.
you know, and then it worked, you know.
Yeah.
So that would gave me a purpose for wanting to do it, but doing this podcast was hard too because I got that. Like, it isn't about me. I'm behind
Yeah.
the camera guy.
Yeah.
You know, I make stuff. I make other people
Yep.
look good.
Yep.
I don't know about this light and stuff. I have, avoid that. But at some point, I kind of have gotten to the point
Yeah.
where it's like, no, I can do this.
Yeah.
I'm good at this.
Absolutely.
I do this every day. I
And you're a
interview
great
people all the time.
storyteller.
Well,
You're
I
a great
interview people every
conversationalist.
day. That's what I get paid to do.
Absolutely.
So why not just do this? You know, and it was really because I listen to my kids.
Well, and that's good.
And that's, they're like, no, you should do this. And I'm like, hey, I don't understand these mediums like you guys do. Like,
Because it's about being in your genius, right? Like I always say to entrepreneurs,
100%.
do you have a good accountant? That's the
Right.
first person
Yes.
you need to hire.
Yes, exactly
right?
true.
And depending on how complex your business is, a bookkeeper.
That's right.
Because, you can
Check
figure
for
out how to
me.
do QuickBooks and spend a few
dude.
hours doing it. But think about how much money you could make in 2 hours versus paying someone else to do it.
Oh, my
right?
gosh.
Like exponentially different.
Oh, yeah. No, in fact, the big leap, I'm going to refer to it, but he has a great story about this neighbor of his. It's like he lives on a golf course and the guy charges $13,000 a day as a consultant, like somewhere in Phoenix, that whole thing. And he's like, he goes, hey, what'd you do today? Well, I finally got my printer to work, my printer.
Yeah.
He's like, oh, how long did it take you? It took me all day, but I got it. I go, well, why don't you try Billy down the street? He's smart as hell. He goes, I did. And he finally came and helped me. He fixed it in about 10 minutes. He goes, congratulations. You just spent $13,100 in your zone of, incompetence.
Yeah, exactly.
Like, why are you doing something you're not good at? And we do it all the time.
We're taught that we should do it all our own.
I can figure that out. It's on YouTube. I could do that. And
Absolutely.
Is that the best use of your time? No.
Well, because we're taught we should
you're
be
not
able
good
to
at it
figure
anyway.
it out.
Right.
Like how many times have you heard parents say, figure it out?
Right.
Another one that I hate.
And there's a certain amount of that's true.
Well, to a
But-
certain degree, yes.
Yeah. There's a certain amount of that.
Yeah, I'm
you
not gonna
can
blow
do.
smoke. Yeah.
Right. I mean, everybody's in situations where they
Absolutely.
need to, and that's fine.
But there's also things like
if I can't get a plumber to go to my lake place because it's too far away and they won't climb the hill, I'm going on YouTube and I'm fixing
Learn
it
how to do
myself, and I
plumbing.
did, and I'm proud of it.
that's funny.
But
Yeah.
I cannot get anybody to fix these goddamn. I'm just gonna do it.
But sometimes entrepreneurs get caught up in that though too about hiring people because they don't want other people to think that they are racking in all this money, right?
Oh, that's a weird one.
It's just a weird.
There's weird, yeah,
there's all these
yeah.
very
I've heard people
interesting
well, we don't want
thoughts.
to advertise because then people will think that we've spent a lot of money on this. I'm like, that's kind of gone away. I haven't seen that as much anymore.
Yeah.
When I was early in my career, I would hear that a lot
Yeah.
from that sort of baby boomer generation or grace generation. We can't invest in that because people will know how much money we have. That we
Right.
spend a lot of money on advertising. I'm like, what?
Right.
They don't care.
It's silly.
They're just aware of your brand or they're not. They feel
Absolutely.
good about it or they don't.
Absolutely. And when I say
what
it's
is
silly,
that?
it's fun
That's
to be
not
able
there
to
anymore. I don't experience that ever now. Is that
No, and
interesting?
I don't hear that about
That's a big
advertising.
change.
And it is changing.
hadn't
But
thought
like
of that.
here's another one. Did you grow up hearing, and maybe we should ask your kids if they heard this too, like do your chores or finish your homework before you go play?
Oh yeah.
As an entrepreneur, that screws you every time because the list never ends.
Right.
So then people
You never
get
get
burnt
to.
out and they never go play.
There's no self-care.
Yeah.
Right. No balance.
Because play is so important for creativity and innovation. And as a CEO, you have to constantly be innovative.
Totally. No, yeah. It's
And
true.
so then we think, we got to get through our list. And then they get burnt out. And then it's like, I got to do all this stuff myself because then they become martyrs, right? Like, and I'm not making judgment here. And I don't want it to come across that way or being sarcastic. But these are the traps that we get into.
Right,
So
right.
when you ask me what I do, like, I want people to find freedom.
Right.
and get out from underneath all these messages so that
Right.
they can go do and be the people they want to do and be.
Right. And it really isn't much different what you're uncovering
Yeah.
and what I'm uncovering. The other piece that we do when I do this brand work is, they figured out, okay, I got my goals and these are the audiences and these are the stories I'd like to tell. And then I make them prioritize them.
Yeah.
And that is the look in their face sometimes is like, I don't know what to do. I'm like, no, you're going to pick your top 5. I'll give you 10 stories because there's a shitload of them. But top 5 goals, top 5 stories, top 10 stories, top 5 audiences. And you got to put them in order.
Yeah. Well,
They're like, oh my God. But when they do, it is so
clarity.
empowering, man.
Yeah.
Empowering to them and their team and to us. And everybody's on the same page. And it's like, okay, let's go forth now.
Yeah.
And whoever is the person inside that organization has to implement that.
Yeah.
And usually and hopefully it's somebody not who's running the company, but somebody that really can champion it from inside. Mm-hmm. They have so much backing and confidence and sort of authority to do it
because you have clarity
and it gets done. So
Absolutely.
like every strategic plan we ever create always gets done like right away.
Yeah.
Because everybody has agreed.
Yep.
And especially the team at the top. Like, no, that's what we should do.
Yeah.
And let's go. And we've had ridiculous success because it's been empowered and sort of okay.
Absolutely. And you focused on, like, I used to laugh when I was in corporate America, we would have these like manuals that were our business plans. I'm like, we're not going to get all this stuff done. I don't care how many employees we have. This is just crazy.
Yeah.
And so today,
God,
even when I talk to small and medium-sized businesses,
it's so much work to build those and create those.
It is. And, like we just built ours out for this year, but more so because everybody then is clear on what direction we're going. It's the map, but it's not this like, it's a one pager and then we go through and do details on our projects.
Exactly,
But like we have 3 strategies, period. And if we're not doing something to hit one of those 3 strategies, then we have to ask, why are we doing it?
Well, you can do 3 things. You can't do 10.
Right.
Right. But and then the other part that I've sort of added in through all of this that also works in the circle plus minus piece is how do you really turn this into action, right? So you've got to everybody's agreed that these are the stories that we got to do, but what's the playlist and the order in which those go? And it's usually around their calendar.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, we do a lot in education. I'm like, I'm never running an ad in June for anybody that does education.
Right.
Like, they will hate me.
Yeah, there's cycles.
They'll hate everybody. There's cycles and there's rhythms and there's times when, hey, we're going to make this pitch. Please run 2 months before so when I get here it's softened or whatever the thing is. But the calendar and that list of what it of sort of the playlist and the plan.
Yeah.
If you've got that and you got the right order for it and you know what you're going to do, it's, I always say if you can tell a story to the right audience, the goal gets met.
Absolutely.
And that's all we do.
With 2 things, having belief and having faith. And when I say faith, I mean spiritually, yes, but like having faith that you are shown the first step and you take that step. And then the next step, you have faith that the next step is going to appear. We don't have to know all 1,000 steps to get to this point over here. Right. We just have to take the first step knowing that the next step's going to appear.
That's right. And in the circle plus minus stuff that I do, it really is around what do people do?
Yeah.
And we make a list of what people do. Like I would take you through it and just like, what do you do?
Yeah.
Everything, and that list is very interesting because we don't often look at what we do and to sit back and look at your life and to see what you've done. And then we circle the ones we are passionate about and love.
Yep.
A plus next to the stuff we don't mind doing, like I don't mind doing laundry at my house. And then minus next to the stuff that we lose energy from or we've conned ourselves into thinking we can do, but somebody could do way better or we just plain hate.
Yeah.
And if you get rid of the minuses, that's a big part of it. The next phase of that experience is when you're like, wow, why don't I just do my circles? What if I did that? And then what's missing that I don't have? Because ultimately all we really want is all this universe stuff we talk about, all this manifestation stuff we've been discussing is all around you just being clearly speaking and believing and often writing down what you want.
Absolutely.
And can you articulate that? And it's the hardest question we ask anybody.
Well, and 2 things with that. Your plus and minus with this and the circles, like that method works even on a business.
Oh, and
Because I've seen
do
a
it
lot of
absolutely.
businesses
Yes, I've
go
done-
haywire because they try to diversify too much versus it's just like a basketball
I've
team.
never really done it on a business. I've done it in a group, but that's interesting. I should think
Yeah,
about that.
because if you think about a basketball team, I'll take any mediocre basketball team that knows how to knows the basics
Yeah, fundamentals. Does it
and
right.
knows them well,
Yeah.
right?
Oh.
And does them well.
Oh, they'll go a
Same
long
thing
way.
holds in a business.
That's why those teams, like, what do you want in college basketball? You want to be old. All the old guys know all the traps and they know, right? They
Yeah.
make the right decisions.
Yeah.
You can have look at Kentucky.
Yeah.
Every year. He's got the best 5 players that
Yeah.
came out of high school. Well, I'll take the old guys.
Yeah. And Kansas is the same way, right? Like Bill Self always has a new team every year.
I know.
Coming
but
in, it's hard.
It is hard. I mean, those guys
Shows that they're good coaches.
It shows that they're
Yeah.
good coaches because they're able to get those guys there. But the teams that are savvy,
They
those
keep
those
them.
little those little FAUs and UMBCs and whatever they've
Yep.
been playing together for 4 years, they do all the
There's
things
a rhythm.
right.
Yeah. Yeah. And so the same thing holds true in a business because when my degree is in organizational leadership and
Yep.
development.
There we go.
And so when you do organizational development, I tell people, let's list out all of the things your company does and what they need to do. Don't put people in places yet. Right? Because we tend to then try to create something that fits a person
Organize the organization.
in your plus and minus, right?
Yeah.
It works the same way. Because if we're doing some little thing over
Yeah.
here as a passion project and
Right.
it's sucking us dry,
Right.
we may need to cut that. That's
right.
not
That's
working.
not serving. That's not.
And
that
it's
is-
frustrating
it's not a
people
circle for
and
us.
right, exactly. And I've seen a lot of companies try to
that's cool.
diversify so much that then they're not good at anything.
Right. You're just so watered
Versus
down.
stay in your lane.
Yeah, stay in your lane.
Doesn't mean that you can't have other avenues because the law of compensation says
Right.
that you're compensated for what you do, how well you do it, blah blah blah, but there's only a few ways to raise
Right. What are you best at? Yeah.
money.
Right.
Is you either offer new products or services, you raise your prices, or you sell more of what you have.
Right.
Right? But sometimes
right.
I see them veer off so far from like anything that matches their core piece that it sucks energy.
Right.
And so I think that might work in a
That's a great
situation.
idea. Well, and so after I take them through the exercise of instead of just asking what they want,
Yeah.
I've always asked them what's missing. What do they not have? People always tell you what they don't have.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
I wish I had this. I don't have this. And as long as I've done this, particularly with teams inside of an organization, money's never been number one. No person has ever said, and I think I've done this, hundreds of times with hundreds of people, different people. No one has ever said, I want more money as their number one thing.
Yeah.
It's usually, I want more time. I want
Right.
flexibility. This generation, the generation, the more they want flexibility.
Right.
That's been a big part of what we've tried to create here.
Yeah.
Or I want a space heater at my desk because I'm
Right.
freezing.
Right.
Or
I
a
think of
window in
Office
my
Space, the
office.
movie. Have you seen Office Space?
Yes.
All I wanted was the red stapler.
We have one right
You
there.
do.
Yeah.
That's great. I love it. I love it.
So what do you not have? And then when people look at that list, then I push it in the positive.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I call it putting your order in with the cosmic waitress.
Yeah. I
What
love
if
that.
you and this is the part that I read it in an article once, and somebody had written and titled the chapter "Cosmic Waitress," and I totally believe that this is how we all are supposed to operate. That we're here because there's a lot. The universe is here to give us stuff. God is here to give whatever.
The universe is here for you.
Yeah, it's here for
Everything.
you. Like, just ask.
Yeah.
And
it doesn't mean that you don't go through stuff, right?
No, it
like my
doesn't.
mom passing away, certain things.
Right,
Like
right.
there's tough stuff that you still have to deal with, but the universe is for you. There's things that come out of that.
Right. So ask for what you want.
Absolutely.
And the real trick for me has been the thing that's made this stuff manifest has been, okay, tell me now, you see the list of what's missing.
Yeah.
Now put in your order.
Yeah.
And do it like you're going to order, you're going to order a whiskey.
Yeah.
Do you ever doubt that it shows up? Do you
Right,
ever
the
doubt that the
belief.
coffee,
Yep.
not even belief, but just completely never
expect
doubt.
it. Yeah.
You expect it.
Yeah.
Like when you go order a coffee and you sit down, you don't have to grow the beans. You don't have to bring it to market. You don't have to, brew it up.
Yeah.
You don't have to bring it out.
I
You just
call
have
that
to
that's
ask for it.
evidence in your evidence bank, right? When things happen, like I just assume that when I take a drink of this, it's going to be sparkling water, right? I think
Right.
about Ted Lasso, who hates sparkling water, and he didn't expect it to be that way. But
Right.
the point being is, to your point, you expect it. You believe without a doubt that this is going to be what it is.
Right. And I always get it. I order it and I get it. And guess what?
Absolutely.
I didn't do anything but ask for it.
Right.
And that's the real
But the
trick.
inspired action is asking for it.
It is.
Absolutely.
But the also allowing it to show up is.
Oh, and receiving.
And receiving. And as many people as you and I work with at really high levels, we're
Yeah.
working with people that are achievers.
Absolutely.
Who they get shit done. Mm-hmm. And their biggest challenge is trying to figure out how to do it. So they'll always, when they look at that list, they'll go, well, if I do this one, then that will happen.
Right.
I'm like, no.
Don't worry about the codependencies.
No, I'm going to ask you what one fills you up the most that you feel the best about. What do you really want?
Yeah.
As you look at that list,
Yeah.
what is it? What's number one?
You're doing the same thing. You're helping change people's viewpoint, their lens, because it's counterintuitive to how we're taught. We're taught not to, and particularly women. I don't do a whole lot of like, I am a woman, hear me roar stuff, and I'm not that way. But we're taught not to ask for what we want.
Right.
And so
That's true.
It's scary then and a lot of people don't even know how to dream anymore.
Right.
They don't know to think about, oh, I could have this.
Right.
Right. I've been
It's not
taught
even possible.
I lived that.
Yeah.
I went to college. I got married. I had children. I got a good job. I lived for my paycheck and the weekends and vacation and, and you fall into this thing. And it took me 5 years working outside of corporate America to realize I could ski Monday, Wednesday, and Fridays and not come to work until noon or 1 o'clock.
Right.
Right? I was so into that mold of 8 to 5, Monday through Friday.
Right.
And so I'm not judging that. It's just a different way of living. And we're taught these messages.
Right.
And until we can unwind those things, and that's what you're helping people do is unwind. It doesn't have to be built on what you think it should be built on. But when you build on your passions, you find other people to support the things you don't like to do or don't want to do that lower that vibration.
Right.
And then success comes.
Well, at the end of it, just put the order in and expect it to show up. And don't try to figure out how it's going to get
Exactly.
there. That's all I ever say.
Yeah.
It's just put it in and look at it and come visit it once in a while.
Yeah.
But don't try to figure out how to get that first thing.
Right.
Like you said, happiness comes right when it's supposed to.
Right.
And that is the hardest part for
Oh my gosh.
people to do is to just go, okay, you mean I get to just not worry about it
and not be
just
attached to
put
the outcome.
not be attached to the outcome, and not try to figure it out. And it's remarkable how many times 6 months, a year and a half later, people they'll call me and go, I just got the thing
Yeah.
that was on my list,
Yep.
and sometimes I've been like, are you okay?
Yeah.
Why are you calling me?
Yeah.
Well,
and
but that's the trick, and it's so counterintuitive to how we are
Totally.
trained to be Americans.
Totally. And I would say too,
Achieving Americans.
the group that I hang out with that we still travel together, that we went to Paris, we will share with each other on WhatsApp. Hey, evidence for the evidence bank. I said I really wanted to go to this conference, but I was looking at my cash flow and this and that. And all of a sudden I got a check in the mail for the exact amount. And we put that into our evidence bank too, knowing that we've seen it happen
it's the whole,
elsewhere.
secret thing. I'm going to get a parking spot.
Yeah.
I'm just going to,
Totally. My friend Wendy does that.
Yeah. The one I always do, my wife and I've done is, we're gonna arrive early and a little we're gonna arrive refreshed and a little early.
Yeah. I love that. I love that.
It happens. I'm like, why don't I do that all the time?
Yeah.
And why don't we do it all the time? Like, why don't we do this all the time?
We live in a culture that doesn't promote that. And it's really sad, And so kind of similar to what you're doing, sometimes what I'll ask people, because I look at different things, like I typically start with physical health because people always have something that they complain about their physical health. And so, and it's easier for them to come up with this.
Like 2 things you never talk about at a party.
Right. Religion.
Medical stuff, religion,
And politics.
money, politics, and root talk. How did I get there? The 405 was so packed.
Exactly.
And nobody cares.
Nobody does care.
Nobody cares.
But when I go there, I ask people, because if I say, what do you want? It's like the deer in the headlight look, to your point.
It's the hardest question.
It is. And so what I ask them is, okay, when you think about your physical health, what do you complain about the most?
Right.
What
Flip it.
frustrates you the most about
What's
your
missing?
physical health?
Yeah, what's right?
Very similar. And then
Very
I'll say, what are
similar.
you tolerating? And I don't mean from other people, but what are you tolerating about yourself?
Right.
Like the fact that I lay in bed and go, I could get up and read and cycle at the same time, but I'm kind of liking being in the covers, right?
Yeah,
that's a conscious decision.
It is a decision.
And then I do the same thing. I flip it and say, oh, okay, so what you're telling me is you don't want to have pain when you wake up in the morning.
Right.
You would like to be less weight, less
like to
gravity
feel
on the
better.
scale.
Yeah.
Right. And so we're able to go through those things, and then they
But
can
putting them
articulate
in
what they want.
Because we talked about the universe is powerful and what
Yeah.
you say is real.
Right.
Putting it in a positive,
Absolutely.
you have to really be conscious about what you out.
Linguistics are
That's
important.
happened sometimes when people filled out their cosmic order. Well, you better be specific here.
Oh, yeah.
Sometimes like careful what you wish for.
Can I tell you a story?
Yeah.
So I remember saying this was back.
'Cause
So
you're gonna get it.
I'm 56. I'll be 57 in
We are-
April. We're right there.
We were right there.
That's right. And
Okay.
so
All right, okay.
when I was in my 40s, when I was in my 40s, I turned 40, we came up here to ski. And I had been saying, man, I've been worn out doing so much work. I'm doing all this volunteer stuff. I just need some time off. I need some time away from everything. And to your point, be specific in what you want.
Oh man, right?
Because I
all
ended
you
up
said was time off.
I ended up on the back of a thing in the snowmobile, gassed up by the time I got there, and I had shattered my tibia
Exactly what I'm talking about.
and 32 weeks on crutches, 2 surgeries, right? I had time off.
Right. Well, and
It wasn't necessarily the way I really
we do
wanted
create
it.
those when we can't go anymore.
Yeah.
We create sickness or
Totally.
and he Gay Hendricks talks about that in The Big Leap.
Yeah.
It's like you create those ways out to give you what you really want.
Absolutely.
And sometimes it's not good.
No.
It's
And I will
it's a
tell
tough
you,
experience.
it's interesting because as I've done my own work unwinding these messages in my head, I used to be sick all the time. Now, part of that was stress of the marriage and some of that kind of stuff too. But, I was sick a lot.
Yep.
And when I started to unwind these messages,
Right.
knock on wood,
Yeah.
last year I was sick with COVID in April for the first time, and I traveled everywhere. But other than that, and I knock on wood, but it's been a long time.
No,
I'm a healthy
I don't
person.
think you need to. I
Yeah.
am too. I mean, I just
Yeah.
got my, went to the doctor, got all the stuff,
Yeah.
and I'm like, wow, you're crazy.
Yeah.
Everything's good.
Yeah.
I'm just like,
Yeah.
wow, that's cool.
And
I
it
don't
is
think that's
amazing because
I don't think
no
that's a coincidence.
medication. No, not at all.
I don't.
Because we're unwinding things and getting rid of it in our bodies because our bodies tell us.
Probably.
Yeah.
Yeah, they do.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, this is fascinating. Thanks
Yeah.
for doing this.
Absolutely.
I
Thanks for
appreciate it.
having me.
Yeah.
It's been a
Anything else
blast.
I didn't ask that you'd want to share about this? I don't know. I just think it's cool. Who knows if anybody's going to like this, but I love this stuff.
I
Maybe
love
it's
this
just
stuff
because we're
too.
in the same era. I
Oh, it
wonder
could be.
about that.
I don't know.
Maybe
Yeah.
there is something to that.
There's almost like a midlife transformation that I see
Yeah, I don't
happening
even mean
a lot of
midlife.
times.
I just mean maybe it's people that are at that sort of
Oh, yeah.
right at the beginning of the baby boomer thing or the Gen X. We're like just
Totally.
at the beginning of Gen X, right?
Yeah.
That there's something about how we see the world or
Totally.
something because I think it is a
Totally.
unique little niche. Of,
I think so too. Kind of
a
that
few
mid
years.
80s
Yeah,
graduation.
we were the big 80s, man.
And
maybe that was
more
it.
so like the
It was
late
a very positive
60s,
time. It was a pretty
early
positive
70s.
time.
Oh my gosh.
Like we could do anything.
You had Michael Jackson.
We know how to
you
party.
had Prince. Now come on, let's talk.
We knew how to party. Like these guys
We
know how
did.
to party.
We
No,
did.
We did.
I hate to
You know what
say
mean?
how many
Seriously.
times did we go out in the middle of a field back in the day, right? Yeah.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
Right, but there's something to that.
Yeah,
I think.
absolutely.
That
It was a lot
is
more about connection.
very
I think
much.
too. One
Yeah.
of the things I just flew back
my
from.
senior class is so close.
Oh my gosh, us too.
And so many others aren't. They're like, is
Yeah.
everybody like this? No.
No, they're not.
Huh.
And it's interesting. I was noticing something the other day because I
Ronald
love to
Reagan.
travel.
Maybe
Yeah,
it was.
exactly.
Ronnie and Nancy. Cheers.
Oh, that's hilarious. I do think there's something to this though because we didn't
He was
have
a pretty positive cat now.
well, and not just Reagan, but I think too back in the day, I still am feeling weird when I say this, but in college, I remember pounding out something on a DOS computer, not really knowing what the hell I was doing.
Yeah.
Right? We had to type
Oh my
it,
God, yeah.
and we
Right.
didn't have cell phones. And I was coming back from Atlanta the other day, and I love traveling because I love meeting people.
I'm traveling too.
And I was in the Atlanta airport, and I'm like, "There's nobody to talk to because everybody's on their phone."
Oh, dude.
And then the lady sits down right next to me in first class, and the immediate thing she does is put her earbuds in.
I know.
And I'm like, wait,
We've
what?
lost.
I got to find a different place now to meet people.
Opportunities for, like, the universe brought you two together.
Yeah.
And she or he put those headphones in and said no to that.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, no, those chance moments are real.
Yeah.
And so many people are saying no to them.
Yeah. And it's not the younger generation that's as much on their phones. I crack up too when I go, and not to sound like an old person, but what are those commercials where you're becoming like your parents?
Oh, they're bad, dude. Oh, yeah. Progressive, I think.
But like when you go to a restaurant, it's the parents that are on the phones.
Oh, totally.
And I'm like, stop this. And so I think there's something to do with like the way we connect. And I think there's like this whole reinvention type of thing that we're into. And I don't know. I feel like I'm open to all sorts of things and learning about new things. And
right.
I think it is our era. And we're going to go with that.
I shouldn't say this because I'm going to be on your podcast next week. So
yes, you are.
We're reciprocating. That's super cool. But that's one of the reasons I want people here.
Yeah.
Because I think it's so missing,
Yeah.
and I did start this in COVID, and it was like I just miss talking to people. We were at that point where you just couldn't anymore.
Yeah.
But there, I was not open to doing that.
Yeah.
And I've got lots of people I know around the world that I'd love to just have on the show, and they can't get here and we could Zoom. Yeah. But I'm like, I don't know, man.
Hey, they could get to France.
What's that?
They could get to Paris.
That's right. Or they could come here. I had a guy from Singapore be here, he was here, and they've had people from all over the world be here. So they get here, and but there's nothing like this, right?
Absolutely. Okay, but you know what? You just touched on something else, because if the desire is really there, you'll find a way to make it happen.
No, that's true.
Like it happens.
No, it does. Oh, yeah. I mean, I remember when I first did kind of our Cosmic Order.
Yeah.
My wife and I did it when we first got together, and it was like, hey, let's do this. Let's have this crazy thing. We had like 30 things. And, one of them, the two I remember was she wanted a red Subaru and totally got it. And it wasn't like we planned it.
Right.
And it was like, oh, there's a car for sale that was perfect. And we, buy the car. I'm like, we look at the list like 6 months. I'm like, you put it down.
Yeah.
Like, did I? I don't even remember doing that. And the other one was, we want to go to Greece. And I had this project in Europe, and I was filming for whatever, 5 days. She came with me. And at the end of it, we extended that trip and went to Greece. And we didn't even know that we had put it on the list.
It's because the subconscious is so powerful. Yeah. We are powerful beings. We can create sickness in ourselves or not.
That's right.
Right?
Yeah. Careful what you wish for. Yeah. Careful what you say.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. Well, cheers.
Awesome. Yeah. Cheers. It was
Come back
great.
anytime. I can't wait to be on yours.
I know.
MIP Podcast was filmed at the studio of Corner Booth Media. Please sure to like, subscribe, and follow us on social media. You can also listen to us on Spotify, Apple Music, and anywhere podcasts can be found. We'd love it if you'd rate, review, and subscribe to help our podcast grow. Be good to yourself and stay interesting.